My name is Konstantin, and today we're going to talk about V8 JavaScript Engine, which is JS engine behind Google Chrome browser and Node.js Runtime, and about its JavaScript execution pipeline, which means all the way your code goes through when it's executed. So we're going to talk about two particular components of V8 engine. It's the ignition and turbofan optimizing compilers. Let's take a look at the old pipeline. Well, as you can see, it's complicated, like really. And in our case, this means that it's slow. Here you can see the parser, which transforms our code to the abstract syntax tree, crankshaft compiler, and actually old version of turbofan, all that stuff. So 2 years ago, V8 team presented a new pipeline. It's simple, really small and fast, and which is very important. It's easier to maintain at this low level. So let's take a look at our stages. First stage is the abstract syntax tree. The parser in a browser parses your code and transforms it into a logical structure, which is called abstract syntax tree. It's a set of tokens for all your variables, for all your interactions between them, all that stuff. You can check this site, astexplorer.net, and see how it looks like. We can actually click it right now and see. Here's the representation of our code, and here's the JSON file. So it's how it stores actually in a real world as a JSON file. Check it out later. And the next stage, oh wait a second. And the next stage is the bytecode. So the ignition compiler processes this abstract syntax tree and transforms it into a code which is close to machine commands, but it still operates with a virtual register machine, not the real registers in your processor, so it can be simplified because you don't need to operate with all these bytes. You don't need to preserve registers manually. You probably know it if you tried assembly language before. You can print it out, and this is how it looks like. Well, as you can see, all these commands are very similar to the assembly language. You move your variables, but you, for example, don't need to preserve registers. You don't need to prepare your memory for executing those commands, so this code is still quite high level and abstract. But on the other hand, it's already optimized for your machine, so turbofan compiler will have less work later. Then our bytecode is processed to a native code, machine language or assembly, call it how you like it. So it's like a low-level instructions. They're dependent on processor architecture, because different processors, they have different sets of commands. For example, ARM will have specific commands, which is actually only for ARM. It's produced by turbofan compiler, and the idea behind this, that behind all the new turbofan compiler, is that it's layered, and you don't need to rewrite all internal pipeline of this compiler to add support for new architecture, because your ignition compiler already gives it quite optimized code, and you only need to add modules. So it's quite simplified in comparison with previous solutions. Here is the example how you can print our machine code. And I probably should show you something about how it looks like. But first, let's take a look at use cases for all this knowledge. First of all, it's really, really cool because you understand how your code works from the very top to the bottom level. Second, you can actually optimize your code using this knowledge. And my friend told me, which is security, he's a security specialist, that you know, some vulnerabilities found in browsers are actually using all this stuff. For example, they're using just-in-time compilation of your code. They're injecting some so-called shellcode into this, and etc. So let's take a look at this fine example. What's the idea behind this? Some programmers, they think that you should move array length to a separate variable. And because of that, your program will work much faster, which is actually not true. And that's why. As you can see, after generating bytecode for all these examples, we will actually see that separating variable in some different location will require more memory. This is the first thing. And the second, that we will run access into this length property of the array many times in a row, which means that this function will be cached, and our turbofan compiler will optimize this stuff on a very, very low level. So that's it. You probably have some questions, and I will be glad to answer them. Nobody ever tried assembly, all that stuff? So the idea behind this is that we just saw the whole way your code goes through when it's executed in a browser or Node.js, and saw how it optimizes during all these stages. Because Turbofan and Ignition, they both are optimizing compilers, and they both are doing their part of the job, which is divided between them so that it will be executed faster. The new pipeline is actually nearly 20% faster than the old one because of that stuff. And it's much more smaller in terms of volume of the code. That's it. I have a live coding example, but my laptop is not connected to the screen. So if you're interested, you may write me someday, and I'll show you.
Hello. My name is so loud. My name is Pavel Metlitsky. I'm Christian, I'm Belarusian, and father of 3 kids. First of all, I would like, before we talk about Scrum, I would like to answer a simple question. How did Europe manage to succeed so much in economical sphere? The simple answer is, among the others, is division of labor. So just a short, brief review. During the Middle Ages, there were no division of labor. During the Renaissance, the division of labor has appeared, as long as manufacturers has appeared. And during the modern time, 19th century meets a lot of changes. One of them was factories with machinery and automation, with extreme division of labor, and Karl Marx. By the way, he has 200 years anniversary. Happy birthday. As we see, as we know, division of any process into small parts and doing it in a repetitive way is a key to success to any business. But also it brings not only advantages, also disadvantages, such as exploitation, alienation, lack of communication, and so on. Let us see how it works in IT management, and it works in this way. At the beginning of business, IT business, they already realized the crucial role which a division of labor plays in production of goods, but they faced the issue of division in management and processes, and they used the model called Gantt chart, also known as waterfall. That means that they thought about the whole production as an integral whole, which consists of consecutive steps which hardly could be reordered. And it involved lots of not lots of, but some problems. For example, if you have some corrections, you have to go back on a step before, and all the other teams should wait while your work is done. Or even worse, you may, and you and your team may may do all your work over and over again. And it's really hard. It takes a lot of time, lots of effort. Your project manager looks like this guy with a whip in the middle of the picture, and you still don't meet the deadlines, for sure. So it's really hard, and as my liveliest Hugh Laurie, as House MD said, work smart, not hard. So at the beginning, at the late 80s, early 90s, Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber invented Scrum. Scrum is a framework under the umbrella of Agile. It's Agile-based methodology. So Agile is a mindset, and main values are, for example, individuals and interactions are more valuable than processes and tools, or customer collaboration are is more valuable than contract negotiations. So for more details, you may visit their manifesto page and see what's going on. So nevertheless, Scrum works in the following way. The main roles or performers of the Scrum production is product owner, Scrum Master, and the team. Product owner is a person who is delegated from business to the team, and he or she knows exactly what business or customers needs from your product. Scrum Master. Scrum Master is a person whose main duty, main job is to make sure that the development is processing smoothly, and every team member has all necessary tools to get their job done. The team, all the other staff, all the people who doing all the work, such as programming, testing, and so on. So, product owner. Product owner collects all user stories. User story is a feature which may be needed in your in your specific product. It's usually formed like this. As a somebody, I need something, some feature, so that could bring any benefit. So for example, as a customer, I need a tooltip component, so that could improve user experience of our users, for example. So product owner collects these user stories and forms so-called product backlog. We can think about it as something like a wish list, which we want to implement to our product. After backlog is done, product owner, Scrum Master, and the team, Scrum team, all the team has the meeting where they prioritize the features they need to implement, and they form a new backlog called sprint or release backlog. What is sprint? Sprint, let me read, is a regular work cycle during which work is completed and ready for review. Usually, every sprint ends up with a potentially shippable product. What else? Terms are really essential for the Scrum methodology. So every sprint lasts for about from 2 weeks till 6 weeks. During which we have 4 mandatory ceremonies, such as sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. Let me tell you about it briefly. So sprint planning, we've already met it. It's at the beginning of every sprint, all Scrum team gathers together, and they think about the features with high priority, which should be developed during this sprint. Daily Scrum is every day 15 minutes meeting where every team member should tell what he or she have done yesterday and what he or she are going to do today. Sprint review. As I told you, every sprint should end with potentially shippable product. So the sprint review is the meeting at the end of the sprint where the team presents the product itself. And sprint retrospective is a special meeting where all the team, product owner, Scrum Master, and the team discuss what they've done well and what they're going to improve during the next sprint. Also, we need to pay attention to such thing as a burn down chart. Burn down chart is a chart where you have amount of work which is left on your y-axis, not done but left, and on your x-axis you have duration of your work in days. So every day of your sprint you mark the amount of work which is left. So in a short period of time you may you may imagine the line and see when all the work will be done. So this is it. This is Scrum and main goals. Why the Scrum was invented? That they tried to overcome such difficulties which waterfall model brought. So they tried to re-establish communication and collaboration between developers and the customer. And the crucial thing is that Scrum methodology helps you to maintain the process of continuous delivery as frequently as it could be. But it's not everything. I would like to say that after Agile team presented their manifesto, another group of developers presented their own, and it's called Software Craftsmanship Manifesto. If you can visit the page of this manifesto, and this brings us to these times. Okay, and in a short period, shortly after this, so-called DevOps approach appeared. So this shows us that that management isn't freezed. We didn't come to the final decision. We didn't find the panacea for everything, for every stuff we have in development. It's still developing, and it's really interesting to study and to implement. So, thank you.
So hey guys, today we're going to speak about network protocols and REST API. Network protocol is a set of established rules that dictates how to format, receive, and transmit data. So computer network devices like routers and servers can communicate. Computers communicate using a layered set of protocols, a prominent example of which is the OSI model. OSI is Open Systems Interconnection Reference Model. OSI model consists of 7 different layers, and each layer is linked to the layer above it or below if the layer exists. So as the data travels down the OSI model, each layer adds additional information to it. It continues until it reaches the last layer. It's physical on the screen. After that, it is transmitted across the network to the other side, and the process is reversed. I will not dig deep in this model, just because this model is a theoretical one and is not directly implemented in the modern networking. So, but I will tell you about the TCP/IP model. TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol, and IP stands for, as you know, Internet Protocol. So this model consists of 4 layers, as opposed to the OSI model. At the top is the application layer. So it defines how certain services operate and how they can be used. So, for example, when you make a request for a browser to access the web server, it calls HTTP protocol to complete the request. So, application layer uses different ports to send the data on the next layer, transport layer. So, for example, when the data is sent across via the protocol 25, it means that this is data connected to the email. So next is transport layer. It receives data from the application layer, breaks it into small chunks. It's header to it, containing the information about destination host, for example, or source host, and is transferred via routers. Internet layer is responsible for data routing. Internet layer adds IP headers containing the information about destination IP and source IP, and transmitted via routers to the next level. So next layer is network access layer. So this layer defines certain protocols and hardware required to connect the host to a physical layer. So the destination can be another host, or probably it can be also a router to forward the data further. So now I will talk about some as I think the most useful protocols to learn. First one is DNS. DNS protocol converts human-readable domain names like google.com into IP addresses that can be understood by lower layers. HTTP protocol is a common way to send resources that power the web, like JavaScript, for example, HTML, CSS, and so on. FTP, it's a way to upload or download any data on the server. SSH is a common way to connect to the local remote, or not local, to a remote server from your local computer. So, for example, you can easily connect to any server which, for example, stands in the New York, for example. Just connect to it, type comments on your local computer, and they will be executed on the server. So next is transport layer. So it's two very important protocols operate here. First is transmission control protocol. It's suited for applications that require high reliability. So when transmission time is relatively less critical. So when the data is corrupted or lost during the transfer, it sends it again. So the other one, is UDP, User Datagram Protocol. It's suitable for applications that needs faster transmission, but it is not as reliable as the TCP protocol. network layers. Most of the internet uses IPv4 right now, but actually, as for now, we are running out of available IP addresses just because they are short and most of them are already used. So they are only 32 bits long. But actually, IPv6 is being rolled out right now. They have some improvements in performance and security, and also it is much bigger. It's 128 bits long. So network access layer, the protocols in this layer depends on physical network being used. When physical network is, for example, local area network, Ethernet can be used. When it is wide area network, point-to-point protocol can be used. So the second part of my presentation is REST API. So API actually stands for application interface, programming interface, and actually it is when one piece of software communicates to the other one. And when you guys hear when any developer talks about API, Google API, for example, Facebook API, what they are talking about is REST API. REST API is a representational state transfer. It is when REST API is called, the server responds with a representation of the state of the requested resource. So there are two important things about REST API that I should tell you about. The first one is actually the endpoint. It's the URL. With the help of which you can retrieve some kind of resource, and the second one is HTTP methods. So they are, as you know, get, post, put, delete. So in the small example about API, I decided to take open with the map API just because it's really simple. Most of you guys have seen small section on websites like to buy or so on, where weather is depicted, so it can be achieved by Open Weather Map API. There is actually good documentation at the link of openweathermap.org/API. So how to make this call? First of all, you need to register on the website just because you need to obtain an API key. So after that, you should make a request. Simply, you should take a link from the docs of this API and add two parameters in the form of key value pairs. First one is Q, which stands for query. It's it can be city or country you would like to get the information for, and the second one is app ID. It's actually your API key. So, and the server will respond to you with the JSON. Actually, I should probably tell you just before that, some means before that API can be in the form of JSON, XML, or HTML. So here it is in the form of JSON. So with the help of this data, you can make also this section depicting weather on your website. So most modern modern companies have their own APIs like Facebook and Google, and developers can make really awesome applications using it. So this is it. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, you can ask. I will try to answer them, but security of what? Is it possible to do what?
To implement, for example, authorization.
Authorization, yes. Yes, you know, just about some weeks ago, we made YouTube API, and in order to make this API, you well, Google actually Google API needs authorization, and if you want to retrieve some data from Google service, you need to register on it, and actually. Thank you.
Нормально так? Слышно? Hello, my name is Kate, and today I try to give you a brief introduction in React. And of course, the first question is, what is the React? React, it's a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. It was published in 2013 by Facebook and as open source library, and became available for all of the developers. And now React choose more than 1 million developers and such famous company, as you can see, like Amazon, Twitter, Facebook, and many, many other companies. And of course, you can ask me why all of these companies, all of these developers choose React. The primary mission of React is make it easier to build grid UIs. React was the first who proposed the concept of components. Before writing your code in React, you just think and divided your code in small logical parts, components. And these components should be isolated from each other, and some updates in one component shouldn't affect to another components. And it allows to reuse your components in your code or in another application, and it makes programming more ergonomic and comfortable for developers. Your component can have children, and communications from from parents to children can be done via properties. And of course, and React, it's rather easy to learn, especially for developers who knows JS, who knows HTML, because it was built upon JavaScript fundamentals, and most components consist nothing more than elements, render function, and properties or states. And also, React is rather simple to integrate with another libraries and frameworks. Another central concept of React, it's a virtual DOM. Maybe you know about some problems in JS. If you create application which update your DOM, update browser DOM very often, this application can be work slowly. And React tried to solve this problem using virtual DOM. It's a lightning copy of browser DOM, and when something changed in your application, virtual DOM finds this element or component and say browser DOM what exactly he needs to change. Not render all of the page, but just this small component. And it's increasing rendering of the page in many times. I said that your code in React should consist of small components, but components should consist from elements. As you can see, for example, it's rather easy way to create element. We just declare const or var and write element how we like to see it our HTML. And maybe it was rather surprising to you to see this combination of JS and HTML, and this syntax is called JSX. It allows us, as I said, combine JS and HTML. We can create a variable, for example, const name, and then add it to our element in curly braces. And in this example, we create function, object, and also add it to our element. When we want to render our component or element, we just need to call React DOM render function. Is this exactly that place where virtual DOM finds the differences between, finds what changes will be done in your application, and say browser DOM what exactly he needs to change. This concept known like one-page application. One-page application. Single-page application. And now I try to show you how create a simple component in React. And the simplest way is just to define, just to write a simple JS function. As you can see on example, we just create function hello world and then return our element, and then call React DOM render and send our component to this function. If you want to use arrow function, it's also no problem in React. Or, for example, using classes. We just need to extend our class from React component, use render method, and then return what we want to see in browser in DOM. As you can see, we can add to our function any properties. like in JS, but there are differences because in React there are two types of properties. The first, simple properties. If you want to add to children components some data, you just use simple properties, and these properties you shouldn't change, and they props cannot be modified. But if you know that you need some properties which will be changed in your application, for example, you create an array and then this was the array of input, user input information. For example, you create a to-do list and adding to this array to-do items. And you know that user will be adding some items or deleting these items. Your array will be changed every time. And for this purpose, you need to use state. And there are some simple examples of using properties. We just add our properties to our function, then declare in our return, declare our property when we return, and also declare when we render our function or our component. If we use classes, we of course need to use this props name for this props. And as I said, you can change state. But for this purpose, you need to create method, for example, handle click, and use and call this set state, and then write what you want to, how to want to change your state. And this is very important because that you need to call this set state to change your set state. There are also some differences in React how we can handle events. But I think React has a very good documentation, and maybe it's a better way to read about this in this documentation. And in the end, I try to say a few words about benefits of using React. And the first, as I said, it's React can help you to increase in rendering of the page, but of course you need to understand that that you need to use React if your application, for example, update DOM very often and your application is not very complicated. Because if there are a lot of components which add callbacks functions to each components, it will be rather heavy code, and it's very difficult to read and understand what happens. Of course, we can use any libraries or frameworks with React. As our code consists of many small components, it's rather easy to write tests for these components. We also can reuse our components, and it's make our code more ergonomic. And for developers who know JS and HTML, it was not a big problem to understand how React works. And this is the end. Thank you. Yes? What exactly? I think it's not a good question, because if you because you need to choose any library or any framework if you know exactly what exactly you need from it. Because as I said, if you create if your application you write is very heavy and it's not not update DOM very often, it's not a good reason to use React. And I think that every framework and library should I try. I just write a small application like to-do list and not more nothing difficult application. Just try it.
Well, maybe you should learn React first, because it's 1 or 2 days and you will write some cool stuff in React. So it's fast.
So, let's talk about inheritance in JavaScript. It is different from other object-oriented languages. JavaScript doesn't have classes. Instead, it has prototypal-based inheritance. The class keyword was introduced by ECMAScript 6, but it's just syntactical sugar. JavaScript remains prototype-based. Talking about inheritance, talking about inheritance, JavaScript has only one construct, object. Each object has a private property which holds a link to another object called its prototype. When we want to read a property from object and it's missing, JavaScript automatically takes it from the prototype. That prototype object has a prototype for its own, and so on, until either a property with a mention name or is found, or the end of the prototype chain is reached. There are two main approaches in inheritance implementation: functional and prototypal. Let's see them closer. Using the functional approach, we can write something like this. Inheritance is implemented with inheritance here, I mean, is implemented with animal apply these arguments at the first line of doc constructor. It gives the properties and methods of animal to doc, binding current object doc as this context. Then it goes on and can add other methods and properties. So when we initialize Pluto, it has both properties and methods of animal and dog. To make the parent properties accessible for child, we should in all cases describe them with this. If we won't do this, the property will remain only in animal without access from dog. It can happen that the method realization in child has some special aspects. We can override the parent method and declare its own in child. For example, do something like this. But usually we want extend parent method and not replace it. So we copy parent method wake into variable. I'm sorry, here's a mistake. Not this enable, but this walk. So we copy parent method wake into variable, then replace this wake with our own function. It still implements parent wake through parent wake variable, but be careful with context here, and adds child own specials. That's it. You're awesome. Now let's look at prototypal approach. For the inheritance implementation, we declare constructor function and write into prototype all properties and methods that we need in child. This is most popular way to implement inheritance in prototype style because it is very fast, very standard, and very optimizable. But there are others. For example, we can implement inheritance through using proto. Proto is a reference to parent prototype, so we directly assign animal prototype to dog proto. You can do this both these ways. The effect will be the same. We can find the methods and properties of animal are accessible for dog. The prototype chain can be any length, but the use of proto is not recommended. Object set prototype off is also a way to implement inheritance in prototypal style. It sets the dog prototype equal to animal. The good thing about this inheritance method is allowance of the dynamic manipulation of an object's prototype and even possibility to force a prototype on a prototype-less object, which was created with object create null, for example. But it's also deprecated. The prototypal inheritance implementation can be done by using the prototype property and constructor function. But this example is a little different than it was in the first prototypal inheritance example. Note that dog prototype here means a regular property named prototype. Setting dog prototype equal to animal literally says the following. When a new dog is created, assign its proto to animal. So the last line of code assigns Pluto proto to be equal animal. But dog has in his proto only standard object. We also can implement prototypal inheritance by passing an existing object as the prototype to the first argument of object create. This way, the properties and methods of animal also can be accessed by dog. Actually, it just creates an instance of animal object. It allows the direct setting of proto in a way that is one time only, and so that the browser can better optimize the object. Also allows the creation of objects without a prototype via object create now. The overriding parent methods with prototypal approach are something like these examples. The first example defines walk method only for object dog and not for its instances. The second one, on the contrary, defines method walk that will be accessible for dog instances, but not for the dog itself. To change the parent method, we can do the following. The difference between these examples is the same as with overriding. If you want to change method only to dog, write without prototype. If you want to change method for instances of dog, use prototype. Now I want to tell something about the class syntax introduced by ECMAScript 6. Class is the syntactical sugar, as I said, for constructor function. Class for inheritance, we use the keyword extends. If we want to extend child constructor with parent and make some changes, we define the super operator at the first item, just the first. You can't write it on any other line. Inside the constructor. This will call the parent class constructor and inherit the members we specify as parameters of super as long as they are defined here. As for instances of the class, we use the new keyword as we did with constructor functions. The benefit of functional approach is the possibility to use local variables as private properties, but it's slower and takes more memory because it sets to object both properties and methods, while the prototypal writes only properties. So prototypal style of inheritance is faster and more efficient, but we can't use local variables as private properties because methods defined through prototype haven't access to constructor scope. In terms of using inheritance in your code, you probably won't use it often, especially to begin with and in small projects. It is a waste of time to use it just to use it. But as your code gets larger, you are more likely to find a need for it. All in all, the JavaScript inheritance is a tricky thing, especially for beginners. But a lot of JavaScript's power and flexibility comes from its object structure and inheritance, and it is worth to understanding how it works. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. No. Our mentors gave us the themes like this, inheritance and keyword this and so on to be prepared for this interview.
So hello guys, my name is Kirill, and today I'm gonna speak about Git, about why do we need this, about what opportunities it brings to us as a developers, and why we should use this as our main tool and main developer tool. So let's start with the main problem of the what the Git solves. So many years ago and before Git, developers have faced many problems which consist of developing history, collaboration, backups, and who made a mistake. And Git solves this problem by its tools. So the first problem that the Git solves is Git history. So Git track your files, track your changes which you made in your files, and it collects these changes into a commit. Commits are stored into branches, and so these branches is your developing history, and you can manage this history in your developing process. So the second problem the Git solves is collaboration, because Git make it possible to collaborate between team developers, between some members of the team, and you can discuss some changes of code, some features, some deploy features, and you can it makes the developing process more clearly for all of the developers and all of the team. So the next one is who should be punished. That means that Git tracks who commit these changes, why these changes are made, and in what time did these changes made. So the next one is project backups. This means that Git simply store your backups, store your app versions, and you can recover some stable version, the latest stable version of your application if you maybe crash your application by pushing some bugs to your deploy version. So the main components of Git, there are three main components of Git: is commit, branch, and repository. Commit is like a snapshot of your current state branch, current state project, and Git simply save your current state of your project in the commit. It's like a snapshot, like a save point of your project. Commit is also should be provided by a short message, which say other developers why these changes are made, for what reason these changes are committed to your branch, and it makes the developing history more clearly. So the next one is branch. So as the developing history goes on, many commits are made, and these commits are collected chronologically, and this number of commits are made so-called branch. So there are only one main branch in Git. Usually it's a master branch. And when the developing process is occurred, every team member should make his own branch and work his feature only in this branch. So and then after finish his feature, he just merge the changes to the master branch, and he or she may discuss it with other group mates. So the repository is just local storage or remote storage of your project where your source code are situated. So the next one is main comments of Git. So as Git is a command line tool, it consists of some basic commands. So the first one is git init. Is it visible for all of you? Yeah. Okay. So maybe we should make it no. So git init. Git init is a base command of every Git project. It simply initializes an empty Git repository, and from this point, Git starts to track your files in your source code. And when you make some changes in your source code, Git simply tracks this, and Git sees that some changes are made in your Git repository. So, and this is the result of this command. Git init command line simply shows you that initialized empty Git repository. Yes. So the next one is git clone. Git clone makes a local copy of your remote repository to your local repository. You can just switch to your local folder like Git or something of the kind, and you can clone some remote repository to this folder and simply work with this repository locally in your computer, and wherever you are, whenever you work, you can make some changes unconnectedly with the remote repository. So the next one is so this is the result of git clone. Git clone make a copy of remote repository. So this is our CV, maybe first codegem. So the next one is git status. Git status shows you the current state of your project. It can show three states of your, maybe here the more visible for you maybe. So the three states of your files is deleted, modified, and created. So git status shows you in what status your projects are now. So, and when you make some changes, git status shows you that some files are changed, and you can add it to the next commit, to the next snapshot of your current state project state. So and git add simply stages the change in to your next commit of your repository. So git commit makes a snapshot of your current state, and you should provide, as I have already said, you have to provide a short message which explain why these changes are made in your repository. So the next one is git branch. Git branch shows you a number of your branches which were made in your repository. It highlighted the current branch. Here is GitHub Pages current branch, and you can switch between them by git checkout. So the next one is git pull. Git pull updates your current local line of history according to the remote repository. So Git pull is necessary when you work in team and your team members make some commits and push their changes to the server. And according to so there are no conflicts between your local repository and remote repository. You should update your local repository by typing git pull. So the next one is git push. Git push simply push your changes to the remote server, and so that is. So the next one is what is it? So GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket is the most commonly known Git server hosting services, but GitHub is the most popular between them because about 15 million of developers use GitHub in their projects, and so we should dive deeper in GitHub Flow. So GitHub Flow make it possible to use Git tools without command line by maybe by clicking some buttons. You can make new branches, make commits, merge some branches into one branch, deploy. You can discuss between your teammates some changes and deploy features. So as a resume, we can point out that Git helps us to manage a developing process. It saves all the project versions, and you can recover some stable versions of your application if you crash some modules of your application. So you can separate your developing process between your team members by switching new branches and creating new branches, merge some branches into one branch, make collaboration more clearly between your team members. And the last one is GitHub is hosting service for Git, and especially is the most popular hosting service for Git. So thank you for your attention. Maybe you have some questions you can ask. No questions, as usual.
My name is Alexander Tikhon, and I want to talk about responsive web design, what is it, and about some tools that can you use to create responsive web page. Firstly, we should to know what responsive is mean. It's some synonyms of the word responsive. Quick to react. When we use our device to surf in internet, we use different devices with different screen sizes, and we do something actions with the browser. We can resize the window, or we can rotate our mobile phone, and our web page should quick to react for our actions. And our web page should be receptive and flexible when we do some actions with our device or browser window. And it should be sensitive. Why responsive web design is important now? Because we have many different devices that you can use to go online. We have mobile phones, tablets, laptops. We have big monitors or small monitors, and we want that content will be displayed good on any screen sizes. And also we have different operating systems on different devices, and we can resize the browser window to work with two applications, for example. A web page should look good on any devices, and we must follow this principle when we create the web pages. We can see the different mobile operating systems with different screen sizes. Responsive with adaptive design. In responsive web design, we have the one template, and we use something specific tools to create our web page flexible, and our web page displayed on different screen sizes with one template. But in adaptive design, we have some basic templates for basic screen sizes, where we can find the examples of responsive web design. We can find the examples every day on different sites. We can see the GitHub or different sites. We can see the web page on the laptop, on the big monitor, on the tablet, on the phone. What we should do to create a responsive web design page? We should set the viewport meta tag. We shouldn't use large fixed width elements, and we should use CSS media queries and use the flexbox. Set the viewport. What is it? I often don't see what is the tag, and I use the hotkey, and I never seen this tag in my code. And this is meta tag with the name viewport. On this tag, we set content white device width. It should match screen width in device independent pixels, and we should include the initial scale to establish a one-to-one relationship between CSS pixels and the device independent pixels. And why we should use this meta tag? Because browser need to know how to scale the page for your screen on your device. We can see the web page without meta tag viewport and with this tag on the telephone. Don't use large fixed width elements. Why we shouldn't do this? Because, for example, on in this we can see the tag code with a large fixed width element, and it's uncomfortable because we should scroll our page, and it's uncomfortable. We should use the relative width values: %, VW, V, and V8. Use CSS media queries. We can see how the media queries looked, and most often for responsive web design queries are min width, max width, min height, and max height. And what is it? For example, min width is the rule for browser width greater than query that we set in these brackets. Flexbox. For example, we can see the container with 3 elements, and we have the class box, and turn on the flexbox. and we can see what's happened with our elements. Flexbox have two axes, cross axis and main axis, and we can see what's happened with our elements because default Flexbox displayed elements in the row direction, and our elements located in the main axis. Also, we can see that our axes have the start, main start and main end, and cross start and cross end. If we set the flex direction column, we can see what's happened, and also we can use the reverse order. We can do this with the row direction. Align items on main axis. We can do this to use the justify content. Justify content may take the values flex start, flex end, center, and space between and space around. Flex start. We can see that our elements located in the main start, in the main on the main end, in the center. Space between. We can see that space is between our elements, and space around our elements. Our space is distributed evenly. Align items on a cross axis. It values flex start, flex end, center, stage. Flex start. We can see that now our elements distributed from the cross start and the cross end and the center, and our elements stretch to full width. We can use the align self to position some one element, because we should that first element should be stretched, second and third elements located in the end, and the last element should be positioned in the center. Align content. The values is flex start, flex end, center, space between, space around. We can see that we have more than one row, and our elements located in the flex start, in the end, in the center, and our elements stretch to full width. Space around and space between. Properties applied to flex items. We can use the flex wrap to wrap our elements, and we can use wrap reverse. It's wrap in reverse order. Also, we can use the flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis. Flex grow is set how much of the available space in the flex container should be assigned to that item. We can see that we change our flex grow parameter, and other elements reduce, but the third element is increased a number of times. Flex shrink sets the flex shrink factor of the flex item. We can see that if we set the flex shrink 1, when we reduce our collections of elements, our elements is reduces, but if we set flex shrink 0, when we reduce our collections, our third element is not reduced. Flex basis. Set the initial main sizes of the flex item. If we set the flex basis and set the flex direction row, we set the sizes along the main axis. And we can use the flex flow shorthand We can combine a row, for example, in the wrap, and we can see what's happened. And it's all. Thank you.
So my name is Sergey, and I'm going to tell you about Unix shell. On the main screen you can see how Unix shell looks like. The first command you should to know is ls. ls helps us to view all folders in the directory. Sometimes we want to view hidden files and folders. In this situation we can use ls with prefix dash and a, and you will see all your hidden files and folders. Also we can combine these properties, and as you can see, for example, it's combined to alt, which means that you see on the screen hidden files and folders, and also time in which these files was changed. The simple command pwd shows you where you are. Just type pwd and show the current directory. Most often useful command is cd. It helps to navigate through directories. You have to specify the path and the directory name. If the directory name has spaces, you should surround it by quotes. cd can bring you into your home directory. Just type cd and hit enter, or you can use a cd with a tilde key. To make a directory, we can use a makedir command. It's pretty simple command. As you can see, just type makedir and the new directory name. In the red square you can see the test which was created. To make a file, also a simple command, just type touch and then new file name. If you can compare with cmd command on Windows, creating files more complicated. If you want to remove a file, just type rm and then type a file name. This command also can delete folders, but you should specify property dash r and then specify the name of the directory. This command also can delete all subfolders and files which current folder can consist instead of Windows command which cannot delete subfolders, and you should to use another command. To copy file, just type cp then source file name and then destination where you can put file. Moving files also suitable in Unix shell. Just type mv command, then source, then file name, and specify the destination of the file. This is tricky, but mv you can use for renaming files. You just type mv, then old file name, and then a new name which you want. As you can see, file was changed to document. Sometimes we need to clear window, and we can use the clear command which clears Windows shell. When we are searching through folders, sometimes we need to open a file. For this, we can just type the name of the application, which can open a file of current file, and then specify the name of the file. If your application can open a project with folders, subfolders, and etc., you just type the name of the application and then type dot. Dot means include all files and folders to open your application. One command which can help you to modify a file into a Windows shell is Nana. Nana is a simple command which can open the file in the current window. Then you can make some changes, for example, edit host file, and then save it and exit without launching another application. The grep command, grep is a very useful command. Sometimes you want to find some substrings in the file, and file can be very large. And you just type grep, then in the quotes you should specify the substring which you can find, and then type the name of the file. Or you can type pass with file name, and you can see I can substring in the string in one string in the file index.html. Not useful, but sometimes we need to know about which processor is installed on your machine. Just type winsat cpu-v and you can see about your processor, frequency, cores, and some stuff which your processor has. If you forget some commands or you want to find new command, just type the help in the shell window, and you will see suitable commands for you. So thank you for watching and listening.
Раз. Нормально слышно, да? А то я не слышал. Okay, hello everyone, my name is Dima, and I will talk about React.js. I will give basic concept of the library and show how it looks. Let's get it. What is React? React is a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. As you can see from the Wikipedia screenshot, initial release was in May of 2013. It was made by Jordan Walk. He's a software developer from Facebook. He was influenced by XHP. It's HTML component framework for PHP. From the companies of giants, React use Instagram, Facebook, and from the recent times, VK start use it. Let's talk about main concepts of React.js. At first, I would speak about JS6, what is it, and how it looks. I would talk how React render elements. Also, I would speak about React DOM and how it works, about components, and in the end, it would be some live coding in CodePen. Okay, let's start from JS6. Have a look at this piece of code. This neither HTML nor JavaScript string. We declare element, variable element, and put into it h1 HTML tag. We also add class to our JS6, but because of this not HTML, we write class name, not class. And also in JS6 attributes, we have to write in that way in camel case style. JS6 is very convenient, but let's look how Babel compiles it. Here we see React create elements. It performs few checks to help us write bug-free code, but essentially it creates object like this. Object element with properties types and another object props in it. Okay. Let's speak how React render our elements. First of all, in our HTML code, we have a div with ID root, and variable element is what we want to see at the page. To render elements, we have to call React DOM render and put into it what we want to render and where we want to do this. Okay, updating the render element. This function calls React DOM render every second by the set interval callback. And let's see how React DOM render this. React only updates what is necessary. We describe in the previous slide whole UI tree, but React only update the text node with the time. How works React DOM? It compares element and its children previous one, and only updates DOM where it's necessary. This is how it works. Okay, components in React. Each application can be divided into the components, these components to others, and etc. Splitting the UI into independent reusable component help us think about each piece in isolation. The simplest way to define components is to write JavaScript function. Here, function welcome the accept props, I would not speak about validation of probes. Think about it like we accept probes and then later we can use it. Here function welcome that returns some JS6. You can also use ECMAScript 6 class to define a component. To do this, we have to declare class welcome that extends React component. And we should write a render method that return what we want to return. Okay, state and lifecycle. I would speak about this, but let's return to our example with tick function. This function render DOM, render element into the DOM every second. In applications, usually React DOM calls at once. And I would rewrite this code to have truly reusable and independent component. And I will use CodePen if I can use it. All examples is from React documentation. It's very good and interesting documentation. Very simple. А как тут увеличить? Тут нету плюса. А, что? О. Sorry for my Russian. Okay, this is our function. For the begin, I encapsulate our function, our component, and I would call it clock. It accepts props and return some JX6, what we want. This we can delete. And here in React DOM render, we render our clock. And here we would use our props. Date equals its current date. Maybe. No. Ah, probes date, okay. this one, current date, new date. Oh, thank you, it works. But ideally we want to use our component in that way. It should update himself. To do this, we would use state. To use state, we should write class. And I mentioned before that class have some additional features, and state is that feature. Rewrite function, class clock, that extends React component. Okay. Should write constructor function that accept props from the parent with the super. And here we describe our state, this equals object date with current date. Okay. Here we can delete this. And we should write render method. Okay, and change this props date on this state date. Okay. Now we have component with its own state with current time, and let's make this component update himself. To use it, I would use some lifecycle methods like component did mount. Method runs after the component output has been rendered to the DOM. Component did mount. We would write set interval. This, for example, timer ID equals set interval with callback. This tick. Okay, lately we describe function this tick. And if we will tear down the timer, we should describe method component will unmount. Where we clear our interval. Okay, and finally we will implement a method tick to update our state, to update our state, we should write this set state. Thank you. Set state, this set state accept an object. And here we would update our current time. Date, new date. Of course it doesn't work. That's stupid. No. Yes, it works. And it's all that I want to say you. Thanks for watching.
Hello. Сейчас. So I'm Andrew, and today we speak about Doom events. Так. So in events, сейчас, одну секунду. Please 1 minute. An event is a signal that happens that something has happened. All Doom events sends such signals, but events are not limited to Doom. So Doom events are sent to notified code something interesting things that have taken place. Each event is dispensed by an object and based on event interface. Browsers have many triggers. Some of most common events types you can see on the screen. For example, it is a mouse event, touch event. For example, например, CSS event at transition end. Event is CSS transition end, or DOM content loader, document events. Event is
HTML template was loaded and DOM event loaded. So, for example, that if you remember your task code gem DOM events, I think everybody used events on key down for check to press button. So, то есть, if you, то есть, this is as an example keyboard events. So to react on events, we can assign a handler, a function that runs in case if on event. There are several ways to assign a handler. We can use HTML attribute, and a handler can be set in HTML with an attribute named. For instance, to assign a click handler for input, we can use onClick. Like here, we can assign a handler using a DOM property. So if we use HTML attribute, browsers reads it, creates new function in the attributes content, and write this function in DOM in the DOM property. So we can use from assign handler DOM element property. But if you have multiply event handler in one event, we can use previous methods. То есть, we can use at event a listener to set event name, set handler function, and send the phase of. I speak about later. If you have removed the handler, you can use remove event listener. For example, if you remember your task code gem DOM events, so I am use add event listener to set handler on event click. Bubbling. Let's show a classic example. We have we have some elements, body, section, buttons, with a handle on each of them. So if we if you push a button, we saw alerts buttons, and them on the outer section, then on the outer body, and so on offers still the document objects. If you this process is called bubbling, because event bubbles from inner element up, so parents like a bubble in the water. The bubbling principle is when an event happens on the element, it first runs the handles on it, then on its parents, then all the way up on the answers. The handler on a parent's element can always get the detail about where it actually happens. The most deeply nested elements that case the event is called target element, accessibility as event target. a bubbling event guards from the target elements start up. Stop and bubbling. Any handlers may decide that the event has been fully processed and stopped the bubbling. This method is event stop propagation. To stop the bubbling and prevent handlers on the current elements from running, this method stop immediately propagation after no other handlers executed. Difference of the stop propagation and stop immediately propagation, it is after we use stop immediately propagation, other handlers are not executed. Capture caption is another phase of Doom. Doom has classic Doom has phases: the capture phases, the event goes down to the element; the target phase, the event reaches the target elements; the bubble phase, the event bubbles up from the element. So it was classic examples. So when we, for example, when we press TD elements, first phase is the capture phase, then target phase, and then bubbling phase. So event delegation is the most powerful handling patterns, and you can see tables. Tables have 9 cells, but tables have 1,000 cells. It doesn't matter, and we set one handle on the table, and not set handles on the each other of cells. So I used this conception, event delegation, in my task YouTube. I have a button, and so I want when we put one of the button, the previous button was not pushed. So this is my code. I use add event listener for ID label for my pagination, and I use a handler if this handle is a remote class from button what was checked, push it, and add a new class at button when we press it. So, and see your results. Browsers have default action. There are many default browsers action. Mouse down starts the section, click on type, checks box, checks and checks in the input. Submit, clicking on input type, kick down, pressing OK may lead to adding a chat into a field. Context menu, the action is to show to the browser context menu. And if we there are 2 ways to tell the browser we don't want it to act. The main way is to use the event object. There are the methods event prevent default, and if the handler is assigned using on event, not by the event listener, then we can just return files from it. Thanks.
About NPM. Oh, okay. NPM, Node Package Manager, is the world's largest software registry. NPM was developed by Isaac Schlueter in 2008 as an open source project for JavaScript developers. Package. A package just a directory was one or more files in it, and that also has package.json files. Over 700,000 of packages, free packages, are available on the main NPM registry. And NPM has 12 million users, and that they download 5 billion packages for a week. More than 150,000 companies, including BBC, Coinbase, Electronic Arts, Slack, and Video, rely on NPM's products and services. Okay, NPM consists of 3 distinct components. First, the website, the registry, and the command line interface, so CLI. The website, we use the website when we want to find some packages, set up profiles, and to manage other aspects of our NPM experience. The registry is a large database of JavaScript software, and the command line interface, so CLI, runs from a terminal, and it's how most developers interact with NPM. Okay, to install NPM, first of all, it is necessary to download and install Node.js from the official site. Here you can find the link. And after that, NPM is installed with Node.js. Second step, to find a package, we go to the site, and in the search bar, press search term and press enter. After in the list, we search out, look for our package, open it, and there are information about this package. For example, we can find here how many times the package has been downloaded, its license, also dependency, dev dependencies, and other information about this package. And to install, it is necessary to use the command npm install, name the package, or npm install with flag G, name the package. Without flag G, it means locally, and the module would be installed in the current working directory named not models. And with flag G option, it means what we'll install globally. And the module would be installed in the prefix lib not modules, and put executable file in prefix lib. Also, we can uninstall and update. To do this, use the command uninstall a package, npm uninstall, name the package, or npm update package with flag G or without. When we install package, npm puts its copy into cache. If you want in the future, install it again. And to clear the cache, we can with command npm cache clean. Okay, all packages has file called package.json file, and its structure you can see here in this file. We can find the name of our project, version, description, scripts, also license, and I want you to pay your attention in the block dependencies. There are information what we need in production, only production. The block dev dependencies, there are package what we need in testing, in development. And we have also block scripts. This block, about it I will talk later. And this file, package.json, it holds all dependencies, what I say, and also there are relevant information about our project. And we can install package.json by 2 ways. First way, npm use npm init command, and the first is from CLI questionnaire, and the second default installation. Use when you can the second way install put the package.json. use the command npm install with flag yes or y. And structure we see after. Sometimes we want to publish our package. First of all, we need to write the code, test it, publish, revise code, test it is necessary, test again, and publish new version. To create a new directory, we can with command npm init, and it is necessary to enter meaningful name and appropriate details of our package. This will create our package JSON for our project, and all NPM packages need main key, and this is defined to entry point to our library. By default, this will be index.js, but we can change it whatever we want. And when our package was tested, we can publish it with command npm publish. This command will publish our package to npm registry, and if you want to change it, you need to have do some changes and create new version. About version, we can see three numbers. The first number it is major version. Major changes break the API. Second number is minor version, and minor change, but it does not break API. And the last patches, if we have some bugs, we fix it, and after we change the last number. And what about NPM scripts? First of all, NPM scripts used for testing, building, and streamlining of the needed commands to work with a module. It helps us to reduce number of configuration files and information what we need to keep track of. After NPM scripts are written as usual JSON key value pair, where the key is the name of our scripts and the value is the scripts what we want to execute. And I can say that they are simply terminal command. There are three types of scripts. Scripts execute automatically, custom scripts, and calling NPM script within other NPM scripts. First, there are scripts what execute automatically, and for example, we can write the script pre-publish, and it will execute before the package is packed and publish it. And there are a lot of scripts, and full list we can see in the official site, link here. After that, there are custom scripts. Here you can see the simple custom scripts what that outputs hello world to the console, and we can run it with command npm run say hello. After next block is calling npm script within other npm scripts, and I add the second line awesome npm, and when you run npm run awesome npm, the second command will execute after successful execution of the first command. And what I can add more, in the version 5, we can see the package log.json file. And this file automatically generates for any operation when npm modify as a node models or node models tree or package.json file. The goal of the file to keep track of exact version of every package what is installed, and especially the packages of indirect dependencies, and it improve to installation process. And that's all what I want to tell you. A useful link you can find here. Thank you for attention.
Hello, my name is Evgeny, and today I will speak about Node.js and a little disclaimer. Node.js is not a programming language, and Node.js is not a framework. Node.js is environment for executing JS. Let's start. Node.js or Node is an open source and cross-platform runtime environment for executing JS code outside of a browser. Quite often we use Node to build backend services. Also we call him API or application programming interface. There are services that power our client application, like a web app running inside of a web browser, or mobile app running on a mobile device. These client apps are simply what the user sees and interact with. They are just the surface. They need to talk to some services sitting on the server side on or in a cloud to store data, send mails, push notification, kick off workflows, and so on. And what is special in Node.js? Node.js is very fast. For example, Node.js using in production by a large company. For example, that's Google, Amazon, Netflix, Uber, I know, PayPal. And application or Node.js work twice faster than PHP. Node is excellent choice for building highly scalable services. Another reason to using Node is that in old application we use JavaScript. So if you are a front-end developer and you know JS, you can reuse your JS skill and transition to full-stack developer. Your source will be cleaner and more consistent. So you will use the same naming convention, the same tools, and the same best practice. Finally, another reason for using Node, it is that it has the largest ecosystem of open source libraries available to you. So for pretty much and feature or building blocks you want to add your application, there is some free source library out there that you can see, so you don't have build these building blocks from scratch, and instead you can focus on the core of your application. This is a sample of Node.js server. Okay, let's continue. A little about asynchronity. Node.js asynchronity by default, and it is a sample. It is a bad sample. It is a good sample. Okay. A little bit about history of Node.js. In 2009, Brian Dohel, the creator of Node.js, came up with a brilliant idea. He thought it would be great to execute JavaScript outside of a browser. He took Google V8 engine, which is a fast JS engine, out there and embedded it is inside a C++ program. And called that program not. It contains a JavaScript engine that can execute our JavaScript code, but it also has certain objects that provide an environment for our JavaScript code. But these objects are different from environment object we have in browser. For example, it's file system read file, FS read file, or http.create server. Okay, some books about Node.js I would recommend to you. It is a Node.js pattern by Mario Cesario. Learning Node, moving to the server side by Shelly Powers. Programming JavaScript application robust web architecture with Node, HTML5, and the modern JavaScript libraries by Eric Elliott. Node.js, it is a step for programming Olympus, I think. Thank you for listening.